probability trees for two different events. Scenario we're going to look at today, we're going to look at two exams, a history exam and a maths exam. Now the probability of somebody passing their history exam is 0.6 and the probability of passing the maths exam is 0.3. So if I'll put our headings up here, we'll put the history here. Here's our history exam, our first exam, and our maths exam is our second exam. So we can start to fill in the tree. So the probability of passing the history exam is 0.6, so you can put this information here, 0.6, and I've done it, as you can see, on the pass branch of the tree. Now, probability of failing the history exam has then got to be 0.4, because if you pass it as 0.6, failing is 0.4, because remember 0.4 is the number that you have to add to 0.6 to make the whole one. And remember, these branches here, if you start on a branch here, the total of these two numbers from this branch must always add up to 1. So that's why it's 0.4. 0.6 and 0.4 give you the whole one. So now we move on. We've forgotten about history. Let's deal with the maths exam now. So the maths exam, the probability of passing the maths exam is 0.3. So we put a 0.3 on our branch here, which means the probability of failing the maths exam is 0.7. Again, we're still talking about the maths exam on this lower branch here, because it's our maths column here. So probability of passing is also 0.3 here and 0.7. So these branches sets are identical. And remembering our rule of 1, the 0.3 and the 0.7 from this branch add up to 1. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the different combinations. The top branches means you pass both the history and the maths. This branch here, for example, means you pass your history but fail your maths, and so on, until we go through all 4 combinations. Now, if we wanted to work out the probability of 2 passes, passing both exams, what we do, we go along the system of branches that gives us 2 passes. So it's going to be 0.6 multiplied to our next pass branch by 0.3. We multiply the 2 numbers together. There's 0.6 for passing your history times by 0.3 for passing the maths, and that gives you 0.18. So we can say the probability of passing both exams is 0.18. Now, they're asking the probability of passing one exam. Now, that exam, it could be that you pass your history exam and fail the maths exam, or it could be the other way around, where you fail your history exam followed by a pass on the maths exam. So let's work out the first of these two first. The probability of passing the history and failing the maths is 0.6 times by 0.7, and that's going to give you 0.42. Going the other way around, the probability of failing the history is 0.4 times the probability of passing the maths, 0.3. So 0.4 times 0.3 gives you 0.12. Now, this is the trickiest question that they can ask in the second half once you've filled out your tree. What's the probability of passing one exam? Well, you've got to add these 2 results together, because they've just simply passed a different exam and failed the other. So adding a 0.42 and a 0.12 together then gives us 0.54. So let's make a note, that came from 0.42 added the 0.12 together. That's where we've got that number from. The final question they could ask you after you've filled in your tree is, what is the probability that no exams were passed at all? So we look at failing the history, which is 0.4, followed by failing the maths, which is 0.7. So we do 0.4 times by 0.7 to give us 0.28. So probability of passing nothing is 0.28. So these are the 3 sort of things that they could ask you after you've filled in your tree diagram. Okay, a little check. If you were to add these 3 things together, or all 4 branches together, which we're doing, the check is and they come out to 1, which is a sum of all probabilities. So that's a little check you could do at the end. So, in a nutshell, probability tree, where you've got two different events, they're independent events and not related to each other. First of all, how to fill in the tree using the information they'll give you in the question. This is the information here that will be given to you. You always get this in the top text. And then using the tree that you filled in, all the numbers that you filled in on that tree, to work out different scenarios that they could ask you in the second part of the question. So there you have it, probability tree diagrams where you've got two different or independent events.